Picture prehistoric rock art, and your mind will probably jump to images like these. Mysterious shapes carved into stone. But have you ever wondered how they were made? Or why? I'm meeting with leading experts on rock art to learn more about the hidden meanings contained in these designs. And later in the video, I'll have a go at making some rock art myself. I've come to Kilmartin Glen in Argyll, in Scotland, one of the best preserved prehistoric landscapes in the whole of Britain, rich in amazing rock art. Helping me to decipher these carvings is Dr. Hugo Anderson-Whymark, Senior Curator at the National Museums of Scotland.
So Hugo, you've taken me over here, but what's so special about this particular stone?
Well, if you shine your light down this face here, you'll see what's special about this rock.
Oh yes, I can see some lines here. What is this?
And if you look very carefully, it's a spiral, and there's 3 lines that spiral out here all the way around this rock.
Oh, okay.
And then they go around the corner. This spiral is a very distinctive spiral because it has these 3 grooves that go all the way around it. It looks very reminiscent of a spiral that is seen in Ireland. The spiral is something we also see up in Orkney, in passage graves in Orkney. So here we are, sort of midway between the two.
Just to clarify something quickly Hugo mentioned there, passage graves are these great ancient tombs often covered by a mound, complete with a long passage that led you to a grand central chamber. Think of the incredible Stone Age tombs visible along the Boyne River Valley in Ireland's Valley of the Kings, places like Newgrange and Knowth, for instance. You may also be thinking that spirals aren't all that impressive. More prehistoric doodle than significant artwork, but no, you would be wrong. As you can see at nearby Achnabrec, our ancient ancestors took spirals, and circles more generally, very seriously. They clearly carried a meaning that was recognisable to a broad range of people in the Neolithic period, people that lived in areas stretching from Orkney to Portugal.
So these are cup and ring motifs. They are part of a prehistoric carving tradition that we call Atlantic rock art. And essentially they are little hollows and they are surrounded by rings.
This is Dr. Joana Valdez-Tullet. Joana has spent her career studying rock art and its significance along the Atlantic seaboard.
The rock surface would be really important when it came to create the rock art. And what we see here is an example of the use of the natural features of the rock that are incorporated into the composition of the rock art. So what they're doing here, they're using this natural fissure that you can see comes from that end of the panel and it goes straight onto that side, and they are using it to recreate a radial. So radials are lines that are often created or carved with the cup and ring motifs, but they are just lines that come from these features. And usually they are carved, but in this instance what they're doing is they're just using the natural fissure to recreate that linear line, that radial.
And it says it's carved and then almost connecting to the natural fissure in how it's been designed.
Exactly. We will see in this panel specifically, we will see some examples of that. But exactly as you're saying, this line is coming from the central cup mark and it's joining to the natural fissure here.
These designs are clearly not random. But is it possible for us, several millennia later, to really understand them?
Joana, it begs the all-important question, what does all of this mean? Why do we think they made this rock art?
So that's a really, really big question, and the straight answer is we don't know.
Oh, okay.
But we have a few theories around. So Ronald Morris was an archaeologist who worked here in Scotland for several decades, and in one of his books he suggests 104 theories, ranging from a function related to predicting solar events, lunar events. There was also the idea that these could have been ancient writings, and so these were the first theories that emerged about rock art. Later on, we see another perspective which moves the focus of rock art research from the motifs to the wider landscape. There's a reason why they chose this place to carve and not that one over there. There is this idea that the rock art could be marking routeways or pathways, could be related to areas of the landscape that were really important for people. There is also suggestions that this could be a mean of communication between groups of people who lived in the same area but didn't really come across each other very often.
If these are messages that outsiders would have been able to interpret, it suggests and shows a high degree of connectivity between different communities in the Stone Age. It emphasises how 5,000 years ago this was a very interconnected Neolithic Stone Age world. And this is an idea that Hugo certainly agrees with.
What does this therefore tell us about the connections of the people who were living here at this time?
Well, it tells us a lot about people moving through the landscape. We're talking about people connecting across these very long distances in the Neolithic, bringing ideas backwards and forwards, and ideas and beliefs.
So much for the theory. It was time for me to rock and roll, to get hands-on at the School of Rock Art.
It's a relatively simple process, and you make it by hammering it with stone and grinding it with stone to the sort of finish you want.
So what sorts of tools do we think they would have used to make rock art like this?
Well, in this area there's lots of glacial cobbles, or cobbles in the glacial deposits, and so you can find all sorts of different sort of granites, metamorphic rocks. Quartz is quite useful as well. You want a really hard rock, something harder than the stone you're working, but a variety of shapes are good. For pounding out cut marks, a nice rounded surface is good, but for doing finer work you want a sharp edge or a sharp point to work with.
And I'm guessing like motion wise for something like this, it would have just been doing that again and again and again on the rock until a indent emerged.
Yeah, it's repetitive pounding. You're basically, each time you hit it, you're creating a tiny little peck mark or pock mark on the surface, and you just gradually batter away the rock that way.
So if we wanted to create a piece of rock art with, let's say, this or a piece of quartz today on an epidiorite rock like this, how long do you think it would take?
Well, you're talking half an hour to create a smaller cut mark, but to create a complete cup and ring mark, at least a couple of hours. And that's just to get quite a shallow impression that we see here. It's just such a hard stone, it takes a long time to wear away.
And do you sometimes see on the rings, on the cut marks, the remains of where the tool has struck? Can you see the tool marks sometimes in the rock art itself?
Yeah, you can often, one of the best ways of finding rock art is feeling the surface of the stone, because you can feel the texture of the peck marks in the surface. This one here, if you feel it, it's quite smooth, because if you run the stone over the surface, you grind it smooth at the end as well. So the rock art has a very different texture to the surface of the stone.
So it takes quite a bit of time to make rock art on this hard type of rock, but less time on a different type of rock, such as this one.
Yeah, sandstone is obviously a bit softer sedimentary rock. So when we find rock art on sandstones, they're often much deeper, because it's easier to carve, it's a bit quicker, and this is what we're making rock art on today.
And so I see these outlines that you've already got here. Does this kind of perhaps give us a clue as to how they may have perhaps prepared the pattern that they were going to do?
You can obviously work freehand, but it's also easy to mark out the surface. Take a bit of charcoal, we can just mark the surface, and it just gives us a guide of where we're going, something to work to when we start pecking before all the dust covers the surface. So let's just going for a very basic cup and ring mark here, just very roughly marking it out, because the dust will soon obscure this, but it will give us a line to work to for a while. We'd try for one of the classic designs we see at Acnabreca. You've got the double horn spiral and also a cup and ring mark here as well, which is in a similar position actually on the stone itself.
I think it's really nice here, just before we really start creating the rock art, you can really see the pattern that you've now prepared for us.
And I mean, this is just a guide, and we can adjust it as we go. We're sculpting it effectively, sculpting the surface. So it will change and develop as we make it.
Well, as we make it, I think it's time to begin.
And begin we did. Now, I won't beat around the bush. I'm a complete amateur when it comes to rock art, but luckily Hugo had some handy tips on how to get started.
Maybe pick this hammerstone. That's quite a nice edge to work with.
Yep. Okay. Yep.
And then what you want to do, grip your hammerstone, not too hard. Take aim on the black line, and then just a nice peck. Doesn't have to come up too high.
And work from the centre out, do you think, from the main things?
Yeah.
And just keep going and going and going.
Just keep going. If you're not seeing any stone coming off, you're going to have to hit it harder.
Okay. I'm seeing something there.
Yeah, I'm seeing, there, a bit of red.
See the chips starting as well? Yep.
Yeah.
You're starting to see the indent much quicker than you would on let's say a harder stone that is more common in this part of Scotland.
Yeah, so I'll just start moving over the rest of that black surface
Okay.
now. That repetitive pounding we're hearing, it drums in your ears, doesn't it? It's a real part of the performance of making rock art. And certainly in the Neolithic, there would have been a lot of people watching you make rock art. They'd have been hearing that sound. They'd have been seeing all this dust blowing around. So it would have been a real event.
You can imagine those sounds, those repetitive beating sounds echoing across a landscape like this, can't you? Thousands of years ago.
Yeah, for hours on end, people in the glen below you would be knowing that you were making rock art up here.
Fascinating.
As we continue bashing away at the rock with the hammerstones, soon enough, the faint outline of the motifs start becoming visible.
That is looking fantastic.
Look at that.
Yeah.
You can really feel the grooves now, can't you?
Yeah, you can feel them, and you can feel the individual pits on the surface.
Oh yes, so from the individual hit marks.
Yeah, each one of them a little bit of your hard effort.
How interesting.
So what we need to do now is make that just a little bit smoother. So we'll grind it with the edge of a stone.
Yep.
Nice rounded stone. We'll just grind it down a bit, and that will finish it off.
After grinding our designs down for a little while, a quick brushing of the dust off the rock and a sprinkling of water reveals our final products.
There we go. Look at that. The colours come out that stone. That's fantastic.
You can really see the patterns there, can't you? The indent of the stone. It really shows how it might have taken quite a bit of time on that harder rock, but the rewards were very much worth it.
It's incredibly close to the designs you can see on Achnabrek.
It's absolutely remarkable.
Several thousand years after they were first made, these mysterious prehistoric rock carvings continue to fascinate both archaeologists and enthusiasts alike. You can still find examples of them today, the traces of our Stone Age ancestors, all across the British Isles and beyond. And who knows what secrets will be revealed, what new discoveries will be made in the years ahead. One thing's for sure, there are certainly more examples of this rock art out there in the British Isles, in the British landscape, waiting to be discovered.